This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
It's a Lekker Rugby Pod brought to you by Sit and Cast, and Harry, it's episode 24. I can't believe we're almost, is it a double dozen into this thing? So it's getting better. Tonight we're going to talk about the Springbok side selected against Argentina. And we're doing this a bit earlier than before, so pardon us if we miss anything. Anyway, how's it, Harry?
Yeah, how's it, MVS? So it's actually, we're sneaking up on 250,000 views, let's say it that way. And I'm on my way to do what you do. I'm invading your province, which is the idea of going into a press conference. I've been accredited by the Australian Rugby Union to go into a press conference with Razor and Joe. I've held press conferences. I've done press conferences with all the reporters and all those microphones stuck in your face. And I'm on the other side. I've never actually stood up and said, please, sir, may I ask you a question? So I'm going to have to think of one good. And you're giving me good advice about don't be married to one question, because at the end, everyone's already said that one.
Yeah, that's so frustrating, I tell you. And you see all your questions falling away one by one. But I've learned my lesson now. And I've learned what I do is I ask a guy to ask me last towards the end so that I hear what they're saying, and I told you before, I watch the body language, and then I pick up little things, and then I ask the questions rather than ask the road questions. It's important, yeah.
So you the bomb squad of the...
I'm the bomb squad, yes. If I never have to say so myself. Yeah, no, I like, sussing things out a bit before I go in there. But in the beginning, as I tell you, something else I learned, and I must give my friend Ken Bolland some credit for that, is you must always either congratulate or commiserate. Not just start with your question. Say, yes, well done, or sorry for the loss. It sort of creates a bit of rapport, and he's quite a gentleman about it, and I've now started doing that as well. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm friends with Harry Wilson, the captain of the Wallabies, so I'm definitely just going to talk to that guy. We're just going to have a good laugh or something, and win or lose. And I think it's interesting when a team loses, there's a way to go about that press conference that's so different. And I always think, I just don't like journalists who don't distinguish from that. I mean, like, they're human, right? Don't try to get someone who's just gone through something horrible to try to throw a shoe at you. I actually want to learn something. I think that's what I want to do. I think I'm going to take the track of at that point in the game and minute 49, what did you do? Because, I think the whole era of Rassie and Springboks on top is about the 23, the squad of 24, the minute 82. The game is expanded. You don't put a lot of teams away in 60 minutes. And a lot of the tides shift in these, moments deep into the game. And even looking back when you lose, you can look back and say, oof, we had just done this, this, and this. We were right there. We lost by 15, but it wasn't really that far away.
Something that you must, I could warn you about as well. When you're at the game, you miss so much. You don't know what you can't hear what the referees are saying. You can't hear when they're deliberating about the TMOs. You don't see all the replacements being done. And then you have to go into a press conference and ask questions about the game. Whereas if you watch it on TV and you go into a press conference, you're much more aware of what actually happened in terms of, on the field. When you sit in the stadium, you can see the movements and the backlines and the alignments and everything else, but you miss a lot of the detail. And then to go ask an intelligent question doesn't work. So what I've done, I've got one of my followers, he does all the questions for me because he watches on TV and he sends it to me afterwards, and it works like a charm. I tell you what, that's
especially when you're going with a team you like, because I'm going to be scrumming all my neighbors. I'm drinking everyone's drink. I'm giving them my drinks. We're doing some kind of weird mall defense in the stands. So yeah, of course. And I wear my emotions on my sleeve around sport. That's what I like about sport. I was always that kind of player, and I'm always that kind of coach, and I'm that kind of pundit. In this case, I'm going to watch Australia versus New Zealand, and I gotta say, I don't really care who wins. I actually think I might actually watch the game with some intelligence this time, and actually I might what I like to do is look for a certain player. I just pick out a blindside or a lock, and I really study them and almost see where the guy runs. Let's say Scott Barrett. I've never actually studied the guy. What do you do? Let's see how you play a game of rugby. But anyway, it'll be great. And this round 5 is really, I'm looking forward to it. It's like we think we know what everything's going to happen. We think, but then again, 2024 has taught us in rugby that anything can happen.
Well, talking about round 5, we can actually now, I mean the Springboks can actually win this tournament this weekend. Or if we don't beat Argentina, Argentina's got a very good chance of actually beating us next week in Nelspruit or Mvela, and then they can be winning this tournament. So a lot of things still up in the air. Now, talking about the team selection, Rassie likes throwing some curveballs, and he's done it once again. You analyzed the caps, for example, in the pack, and they're a pretty inexperienced pack. Some old heads there, but on the starting pack is not the most experienced one we've seen in a while, and whereas the bomb squad is a little bit more experienced, not that much more. If you take Eben out of the picture, your thoughts on that?
It's like Rassie's trying to make himself interested. He's inventing a harder way to go about it. If you last week we talked about the strength of the Pumas pack, and besides hookers, it also resides in their back five, because you can actually reel off their names. You know them: Lavanini, Petty, Kramer, Matera, and Gonzalez. Really good back five, and they have support coming off the bench too. So interestingly enough, that back five is where Rassie has gone ahead and said, you know what, I'm just going to give you eight caps for Salmaan, 4 caps for Ruan, 22 caps for Eskom, 3 caps for Ben Jason, who just had a bad performance, and then 28 at the back for Jasper. But I'm probably going to yank off Visa, and certainly going to bring off Murat. So it's like he's setting up a system where he's telling these guys, these back five, Salmaan, Ruan, Marco, Ben Jason, and Jasper, I'm kind of putting it on you. I'm saying you have to play players that are better than you. They're making more money than you, besides maybe Jasper. They're more regarded in Europe. All of those guys are paid top euro. And some of them have 75 caps. So if you can keep us in the game, if you can relay the baton around the stretch and you give it to our sprinters, our finishers, then you did a good job. I mean, even if you're within 3, 4, 5, 6, just even if it's single figures, we think our guys can bring us home. Kwacha, Eben, and Vincent, they're going to come off there and come fire us up. But it's still a gamble, and it does say to us a little bit like, yes, it's true that he really wants to win the rugby championship, and he never wants to drop a game. But Rassie is also willing to play the riverboat gambler and go all in on the chips. There's no doubt about it. In this battle of the two teams with wear white pants, white shorts, I don't know if you look at the lineups and you're going to say it's so obvious that our starting 15 in the pack is the better one. This is one of the first times we're going to go out there and they could out-physical, they could bully. Salmaan Murat has never shown that kind of bully, traditional Bok DNA enforcer tight head lock yet. And so that's another thing. I think Rassie is using this opportunity to say, hey, Ruan, you haven't been that physical either. My 2 locks need to be more physical. What would be a good test? I know what. A small, dusty town in the semi-arid region of Argentina where they're going to be like eating, asado all day and drinking and getting ready. It's going to be rowdy. And Tomas Lavanini, who is a mountain of a man, is going to teach you guys a few tricks. I think it's great, with big brother Eben on the bench waiting to come in and save you. But, I think Rassie is not above using some mental gymnastics to motivate his young guys.
Do you want to sell your car? We'll buy it quickly and easily. We'll make instant payment after fast valuation at unbeatable prices. Get a great offer and sell your car today. Sithen Cars, the better way to buy and sell cars.
Yeah. Well, you like your analysis in terms of, you call it chukkers, 10-minute chukkers. So there's 8 chukkers in a game. And you said typically in the recent past, the Springboks have held their own in the first 4 chukkers, the first half. And then the first 20 minutes after halftime, basically, they would just put pedal to the floor, pedal to the metal, and annihilate the next team. And then the last 20 minutes, just hang on. We saw it with the All Blacks, for example, not being able to score, or the Springboks for that matter. We've basically lost that game against Ireland in the last 90 seconds, little things like that. If you take that back into account, do you think Rassie is saying to them, listen, guys, just hang on in there, and then don't get knocked out or anything like that. Don't worry, the bomb squad's going to come on after halftime? Or do you think they're going to have to go for a bit of an extended run to be able to make this Springbok recipe work with this upside down team, if I want to call it that, being inexperienced starting lineup and more experienced bench?
Yeah, it's actually a good point because the backline is tremendously experienced. You have Kobus, you have Andre, Makazole, Lucanio, Jesse, and then at the back you have two people with fewer caps, Kirtley and Fassi. And then it's flipped around on the pack. And what's interesting about that is the continuity I would draw. So I kind of looked at that and I thought, oh, now we're doing something different. But the continuity I would say is the Springboks have not been putting anyone away. Neither has anyone put the box away in the first 50. It's been a long time. I think the Lions was the only team that actually built a very large halftime lead against the Springboks in ages. All the losses to Ireland have been by a fingernail. So I thought about when it's happening. Even in the Durban loss, there was a point in time that the Boks went 18-3 up. And it was right around that kind of awkward phase I'm calling the 5th to 6th chukka. It's divided into 10 minutes. It's that 55, it's that 45 minutes to 63, it's 42 to 61, different games, but it's somewhere in there, about a 20 to 25 period of time where the Boks are winning the match. And then they just shut you down. They just shut you down in the final part. No one scores either way. It's like in the World Cup final. No one scores at the end. 10, 15 minutes, it ain't happening. And so everything has to happen in that interim, the interregnum between the two sides. We know how the Boks will look when they start in Argentina this weekend, and we know kind of how it will end. What we don't know is the weird mix between the baking soda and the flour and the sugar and whatever else is going in there in that middle, in that kind of just post oranges. And I think they use oranges differently than most of the other teams. I kind of think that the coaches are not wearing themselves out talking about you've got to do this more and rev them up. They're actually doing game planning. And they seem to be able to find the right moments to introduce Vinnie Koch instead of coming early. Sometimes it's late, sometimes it's early. You saw the All Blacks just kind of saying, you just play, whoever's playing well stays on, and then at some point someone comes on. It had no intellect to it. It was more like how we used to use the bench, which is sometimes you don't even use the bench. Sam Derry doesn't come off the bench. All the Boks are going to get on. It's just a matter of who will be playing with who. And so there's a potential here where you have a front row that's quite interesting because you could have Tank, Jan-Hendrik, and Steenekamp on the same front row for 10, 15 minutes until they bring in Vinny. And that's interesting because they're all they're kind of swing props and a prop hooker and a hooker prop. And if you combine that with Kwacha, Elrich, and whoever gets to stay on, whether it's Eskom or Ben Jason, you could have a highly mobile pack. I mean, Eben still no slouch. So you have a very quick pack on your hands. Probably Ruan's strength also is getting around the park. If you have Ruan, Ben Jason, Lowe, Kwacha, Steenekamp, Jan-Hendrik, I just think about that composition, how that's different than other teams. Because most teams go, oh, my big, heavy, scary pack starts, and then I bring on some guys when the game opens up. What if the game never opens up? What if the game closes down in the final 20? And so I think Rassie has invented, and not just Rassie, but his coaching crew, and we should give Coach Stick his props too, because I think he's very clever at this, is changing the configuration. So if you're playing against the Boks now, you might end up playing a very different set of Boks in the first 50, and then the next 20, and then the final 10. Almost like a cascading, subsiding period of time. The first 50 will go by really quickly because there's a lot of set pieces and it's a lot of crunch, penalties taken. That 20 that comes next is where things get out of hand. And that it might be there that you introduce Jaden in for Kobus, but you slide Andre over into 12. And so suddenly you're facing a different attack. You're geared up for 50 minutes against this thing. Pollard's doing kick chase. Fassi's enjoying it, picking up scraps. Kirtley's also doing that. There's counterattack, quick strikes like the French quarterfinal. And then you end up in that 20 minutes. Suddenly you get a two playmaker system where Mani and Andre are literally setting up in that sort of diamond tip shape. And Creel is staying way out on the wing. And you're just looking at a different system. So I think the overall continuity is never to let your enemy be comfortable. When the other coaching block is Springboks is wondering what's going to happen from minute 45 to minute 65. They have no flipping idea.
Well, if they have no idea, how can we have it? But I wanted to know, why would you go for a mobile pack like that? What is Rassie seeing on the Argentina side in that third quarter that would not justify, but entice, if that's the right word, the selection of a more mobile pack? What's going to happen on the other side? Because you obviously can't bring on a more mobile pack against it if it's not going to work against that specific opposition in that specific period of the game. Or am I mishearing you?
No, it's a good statement as well. Just before that too, so Rassie and co have worked out scenarios. It's just that they're within each scenario, they're okay with A, B, C, D, and then so scenario 2, A, B, C, D. They're more flexible in the moment, so they just have no preset. Like the Heineke Meyer said, you literally knew exactly when the front row would be substituted because you told the guys before. On the second scrum, on the second half, you're off. Rassie's doing that more game timey, and so that's why it's difficult to prepare, because when you have maybe a different kind of front row in your Argentina, like how do you prepare for that when Ox could play 70 or could play 40, Tank could go 40 or 60, and you could see Marks playing a long time in this game. So it's very difficult to know what to do. Why would they do some of these quick pack finishing is because Argentina is a little bit heavy. If you actually look across their team, and they're not as strict on the strength and conditioning and nutrition side. A lot of them play in the French leagues where it's okay to add some padding and then lose it and add some padding. They bullied Australia. They're not going to bully South Africa. So to beat South Africa, you got to do both. You have to be strong, and you also have to be fit, because the Springboks will be the fitter team. And there's not really anyone on the Argentina team besides one Martin Gonzalez that could match Ben Jason's or Quacha's or probably even Etzebeth's, athleticism and the ability to go for an hour. I think Rassie thinks we can run these guys off their feet, and in the final 20-30, it's going to be a nightmare for the Pumas. The second thing is on the breakdown, what he wants to envelop is a system at the end, like I said, where it's doomsday. If you haven't caught us and got us by minute 60, you have no hope, because we flood every breakdown, because we can have 4 jackals on you. The last moments of Marks, the introduction of Quacha, the fact that Skinnerkamp can get over the ball now, the fact that Eskom is a nuisance all day long. Elrich Lowe doesn't seem like a slouch in the ability to stride over. He uses legs more in the ruck. There's just a lot of ruck nuisance. And so Argentina has the fastest rucks in the rugby championship. And then depending on that, they are ruck builders. We are ruck destroyers. And when we put our mind to ruck destruction, it really works. One reason why New Zealand did pretty well at moments in those two matches was that they were kind of playing a buck ball game where they were destroying rucks, and they weren't trying to build so many. Argentina has no discipline around stopping their attacking plan. They will try to build rucks. They will try to launch attacks. They will try to run from too deep. And so I think Rassie wants to have a full court game that escalates. It starts out this way, and then in that middle, those 5th and 6th chuckers, it becomes even worse. And then in the end, it becomes, 10 minutes of hell. Okay.
Maybe I've asked this already. Just correct me if I'm wrong. But we saw what Argentina in full flight can do to a team like Australia, for example. Do you think Rassie's got enough safeguards built into this team to be able not to fall prey to what they did there? Like you just said, now they're building rucks, we can destroy rucks. What else did they do well against Australia that we as the Springboks have to be careful and on the lookout for, and sort of have to be able to counter?
Yeah, so they got to the second receiver and they made the second pass more than you should ever allow a test team. What the Nienaber defense as now revised by Flannery suggests, and it makes this assertion, which is, we'll give you the first. I'm not counting the scrum off to the 10. I'm saying we'll give you the first pass from the 10 to wherever you want. You will not make the second. You won't make the second, not just because we're going to be man on ball and it's too risky, and we're enticing you to float over the top, which is, Leckerback territory. We also are going to make sure that when you look on that second one, there's too much static. There's just bodies everywhere. Now we got that wrong against the All Blacks one time when there was 2 shooters where Jesse bit in, and so did one of our Leckerbacks. And so then you had Caleb Clark strolling in. But generally speaking, for the last 5 years now, if you try to think of those tries, you won't come up with very many. And it's because that second pass doesn't get there. Number 13 gets caught in possession. The fullback entering the line gets caught in possession. So Argentina is a bit languid on that. They don't have snap. They have kind of quick ruck ball, a long good pass, and then from there they do some looping, they do some positioning. Cinti and Chocobaras depend on there being 2+ passes. I'll put it this way, if we allow them 4 passes, we're in trouble in one particular phase move. If it's 3, we're also kind of in trouble, but we can probably recover with our scramble because we're quicker than them. If we can keep them to 2 or less all the time, it's going to be really rough. Argentina is going to have to build attacks on something else, which is probably kicking. And that's where I think Kirtley and Falele are going to have some fun. Argentina is not playing very tight. And Australia just fell into this idea of scoring 20-3 because the Wallabies went up 20-3. There was a lot of space everywhere. But it's almost like playing a sport where your opponent knows they can do this forever and you can only do it for 20 minutes. That's what happened. The Springbok can definitely play an 80-minute, Harlem Globetrotter type of approach if they want to against Argentina, not against Ireland, not against the French, and not against New Zealand, maybe against the French. But Argentina is not able to maintain that. If you give these guys, if you give Mani Lubbock coming on at 65 minutes, a lot of space, you've seen that story in the Urk. He just carve you up. And Fassi as well. If you give him an outside shoulder, and Chocobaras and Cinti and those guys are not going to be able to catch Fassi. They don't have that kind of raw speed that even England does to chase you down. They just don't. They are definitely handy. Those are tidy backs and they swivel, but they don't really have a sprinting, prowess.
Right. Talking about Mani, and we talked about the 6-2 bench that necessitates a certain kind of approach in terms of when you bring your backs on, because if you have a back injury, you're in trouble if you brought your replacements on too soon. Yeah, like you said, maybe blows out his knee and Mani's already on the field. What do you do? Talk to me about that side. You mentioned Mani maybe coming on in the 65th or 70th minute, but Mani being the weapon that he was that a clever move, or should we maybe have gone for the 5-3 to give us a bit more freedom in terms of bringing Mani onto the field?
Yeah, that's a super cool question, actually. I would imagine that was one of the things that they debated early, and before they had that debate finished, they went nowhere. Like they just until we resolve that. So, do we want to have one extra forward? Do we want to? And I think that's all about the fact that Murat and Ruan are so inexperienced as a duo. So once you have that, then you need to. One of them has to come off, probably Salmaan, and Etzebeth probably becomes captain. What you don't want to have is a very critical line out when the game's still in the balance at 70 minutes, and you have, Vessels throwing into Murat, where one of the great line-out thieves in the world, Guido Petty, is up, being lifted right in his pathway. So that's a nightmare. So I think they thought they had to put 6 forwards on the bench. The front row is already done, so that's 3 of your. And so, do we go 3 or do we go 2 on the replacements? So Kwacha and Lowe give you work rate and breakdown mastery, and Etzebeth solves your set pieces as a lock. Plus, he's got that X factor of being able to chase kicks, and I think it'll be a heavily kicked game. So come back to the backline then, and you wonder, one of the ways that the Boks have solved 6-1 or 6-2 or 7-1 is to have a scrum off that can play other positions. So there is a chance here where Kuba stays on the field. He's ultra fit. Grant Williams does this as well. And so you can move them around. So if you do that, then you can bring Mani on earlier. If you don't, if you pull off Kubas and you put on Jaden, who is not a all court player, you're not going to see Jaden move elsewhere, then you really have to hold Mani back. Either until you're sure that the game is well in hand, or you have to chase it. So in a game that is sort of not outside the balance, but we're up by 7 or 8, you're probably going to leave Pollard on for a pretty long time running the ship, and then you're going to just see where Mani fits in. I don't think you're going to see 30 minutes of Mani if the game's tight. However, go up by 10, go up by 12, Mani will come on right away. Pollard shifts to 12. You bring off arm, and you basically you have a fully loaded backline.
Calculate your monthly vehicle finance. We offer customizable finance plans tailored to your budget. Easy application, expert assistance. To learn more, visit sithandcars.co.za. Sithan Cars, the better way to buy and sell cars.
One of the things talking about Mani, you and I speculated on Monday night about what the team would look like. And I think, if I remember correctly, we were sort of in agreement that Mani is going to start. And then Mani goes to the bench, maybe for 10 minutes or something like that. That's a completely different approach here, no?
Yeah, it does tell you something, doesn't it? And we were fully honest to the audience about that we are in speculation mode, because it was the least predictable team for us to guess. And I think even the guys who do this for a living all day, every day, which is speculate about teams, they didn't have this one. I actually have a pretty good cross section of people, and I think also if someone had, they would have already told us by now. Look, I did it. They didn't, because there's some interesting facets. Probably one of the most interesting facets is, like I said, the imbalance between the back line, which is usually not where we go. That's usually where we might put more people who are less than 20 caps. But this time we only have there's no one in single digits except for Fassi. And so I was thinking about that, and I think maybe they really want to build a bulwark, a fortress. Like if Fassi's the castle, they want to have a series of moats. Speaking of Argentina and moats. So before you get to Fassi, before you can find him out, before you can rattle his cage, you're going to have all these other guys that are seasoned. Lucano is a good communicator, and they know each other from the Sharks. I think Jesse Creel has grown into more of that role as well. So you have people who are going to help you and hang back. And so I think also Pollard is a really excellent kicker to chase from. He has an extra hang time, and he tends to pay attention to exactly where he's dropping the ball. He's not just kicking it to kick it, and he's not only a cross kick merchant. Pollard is really good at putting the up and under down in the most awkward spaces. I also think that there's a play here, which is when you play it out and you have Mani getting that quick delivery from Jaden, because the ball is always quicker than the man from the 9. So you have the quick from Jaden to Mani, and Mani's got space, and just outside him he's got another kick if he needs it, but he can also bring Fassi and Kirtley and those guys into play. That could be a lot of speed for the Argentinians to handle. So I do think there's a way of constructing this team where in that critical time that I'm calling, between 48 minutes and 62 minutes, somewhere in there, you just have a lot of speed on the park, but enough insurance with Pollard for kicking at poles and for relieving, even an exit. Even if you just need that one more pass and then you can kick from a different angle. The line kicking of Pollard is underrated. So the more I thought about it, I go, okay, I can see it. I just wouldn't have guessed it. And I think, as we said over and over, we really had no idea. There wasn't the kind of head fakes or hints or, just little like tips that we would say, okay, we see what's happening here.
Well, you and I spoke about the Imaginal line the other day. So if you have to go draw the warfare analogy again, would you say that first half would probably it's going to be trench warfare, holding, then blitzkrieg with some aerial strikes and the likes, take position, and the last 2 minutes hold. That's what we're going to be looking at.
I think it's exploring for errors. I think mining your opponent, exploring and reconnoitering your opponent for errors is classic rugby. It's certainly classic rugby on the road. If you're far from home, what you want to do is not be the team that makes the first 3 or 4 errors. If there's 5 errors in the first half, you want 4 of them to be the Pumas. And so one of the ways you do that is you don't exit by foot. So the Springboks are by far the team that is exited without kicking by running the ball out of the Rugby Championship. So, oh, but we're winning 4 out of 4. Yeah, but that's right when you can do Imaginal line thinking. Like, so that's right when you might shift. And I would say kick the leather off everything for 30 minutes. I mean, everything. Just keep kicking, keep bombarding, and kick long, kick the French style, where Malia and Carreras and those guys are scooping up stuff from way back. And then invite them to kick it back, because they have to at some point. You have to kick back. You cannot just keep running it back. And then you have the counterattacks for the Butcher and for the weekend special. It's the idea that you're kicking on your terms and creating them having to make decisions instead of putting too many decisions back on us. The other thing about that is, I do think the conditions influence this selection. Very dry, very hard, almost like playing in the Free State, just Quagga territory. It should really suit Kurtley and Fassi and Quagga, and probably to some extent it'll suit guys like Marco and Jasper. Jasper on a field like that is not that fun to tackle. So you see tackle stats and you see Marcos Kremer doing a lot of tackles, and it's true. He always has a high tackle count, but they're not dominant. He doesn't play as scary as he looks. And so I think there's going to be people there that can profit from that. The other, thing we haven't talked about right now is this idea that the Springboks are intentionally introducing top players into the coaching box. I've said for ages now that Ireland has built a team full of captains. They're captains in waiting. They're captains from their provinces. They play like captains, and they play like everyone is a peer. Like it's just a round table full of knights. Everyone's the same. And I think that what we're seeing before our eyes is the maturation of the Springbok team in a true succession planning, where a lot of these players, Willie Leroux is a coach on the field. Andre Pollard is increasingly looking like a coaching type figure. You can look at Ivan Etzebeth in that way, but I'm not sure he's ready to go there yet. Dwayne has already made the leap. And now we have this news coming out of Rassie, the honest king, the most honest coach and the most candid coach in the world, that he wanted Sia to be in the coaching box because Sia wasn't getting what it was like from the other way around, which is very interesting to think about. Why was it so important? So why would you even sacrifice perhaps the dominant tackling and dominant carrying of Sia in this match? And there was a bigger purpose. But what that does mean is we get to see Eskom and Ben Jason, which I'm really, really happy about. If I was thinking about the thing I'm the most happy about on this team, it is looking at Ben Jason coming back and proving something. And I think it's the perfect kind of opportunity to do that. Far from home, I fancy that Ben Jason's probably good at that. I could imagine him being excited about the fact of being in a small town, probably do research about it. I think it's a good place for him to come back and say that first almost perfect test was not a fluke. And then, I don't know, lately, have you seen Marco play a bad game? The guy just looks like he's mad at the world. So I think when you have Visa and Eskom running at you, it's like Mr. and Mrs. Hippopotamus, in a bad mood at the waterhole. It's going to be tough for them to stop. The goal there, I think, is to make Pablo Matera a tackler, Marcos Kremer a tackler, and keep it a bit more tight. I don't think you're going to see these skip. I think there's going to be a softening up of the Pumas, because I think the theory is that is going to make sure they have to bring on their bench, and their bench is not nearly as good.
I'm getting excited. Okay, you talked about strengths, obvious weaknesses for you. You and I were joking. Where's Colby when you need him? Because Jan-Hendrik is going to probably overthrow a line out. And I'm sorry, I'm shouting when I say that, because I'm going to get, annihilated for that.
Wow.
But the point is, Wessel's got form for not throwing in lineouts under pressure, not performing under pressure. Okay, he's been with the box for a while now. Maybe they worked on it. And I was kidding about Colby maybe doing the throw-ins and the lineouts, but we're wondering about maybe Kurtley can do it. But I'm a little worried about that. This little versatility, Swiss Army knife kind of approach to players can come and bite us at moments when it really matters, when you have an inexperienced hooker being expected to do under pressure throw that the match can hinge on, that it's happened to at the Bulls, and he's failed to do that. So that worries me a bit.
The lineout is the block weakness of 2024. It's one of the only weaknesses, but it is a glaring, looming weakness. And so you have the unwelcome, unappetizing specter of Jan-Hendrik Wessels taking the ball, doing that kind of flip around, getting the towel, the crowd going crazy. We're only up by 2, and we got a line out 8 meters from our line. And they know pretty much that it's only going to 2 targets because Quagga is not a line out option. And so you kind of have to go, is it going back to Eben, the front? Is it going to the middle to Ruan? Probably not, because why would you do it to the middle in this particular situation? Maybe it's to the back to Elrich. Nah, probably not. That's a long throw. It's probably going to the front. It's going to Eben. And just like when the All Blacks tried to win a line out in minute 79, it was kind of easy for Peter Steff to know where it was going. And that front throw is not as easy as people think, because you have to put it in a place that the referee doesn't see as crooked, because it's going to be contested. Why wouldn't you on a defensive line out when your opponent is 8 meters from their try? And the other thing is you don't want to gun it. It's actually easier to steal if you do that. So you've got to put a little bit of loft in it, which is weird because you're only throwing it, 7 meters in. But you've got to put a little bit of air under it to let your guy be lifted to it, as opposed to try to smash it in there, and then the ball goes anywhere. So we can say that scenario, it could exist. It's easy to imagine that happening if we're in a tough game. And then you wouldn't want it to be Wessels. You just wouldn't, because he's got 2 caps. How long did it take Malcolm Marx to how long did it take Malcolm Marx to be a reliable lineout thrower? It wasn't in the first 2 seasons. I think it was in 2018 that started to come around, and he had the 10 out of 10 game at Newlands. And from that point on, he's been one of the most reliable throwers. And what Malcolm would say, because I've watched his lineout preparation, it's changed over the years, is he's really just fundamental now. There's no frills to it. It looks a bit like Bismarck's, where you have the 2 hands, and it's a very like a machine. It's set. He doesn't deviate. There's no tell. There's nowhere for the poker player like a Victor Matfield to read it. And it pretty much comes out of his hands the same way every time. There is no way Jan-Hendrik Wessels has developed that yet. How would he? I mean, that's impossible. We're wanting Mani to develop that at 16 caps. So at 2 caps, you haven't got there yet. And this is actually the beautiful thing about this building process, is that, Rassie is getting caps into people. Marco at 22, no one has you don't have any heartburn about Marco going on. He's going to be fine. Visas into that 28 cap region. We need Ben Jason, we need Elrich, we need Ruan, we need these guys to have some. And maybe above all others, we need to solve the riddle of Salmaan Murat. What is he there for? Is he there for captaincy? Is he there for stability? Does he have some technical expertise that we're not aware of? Because it doesn't look like it's apparent yet. Whereas when you see Ben Jason Dixon going, you saw why he was there. There were moments where you thought, that guy's the best guy in the whole field. Then he stuffs up, but you still have the errors of enthusiasm. I would like to see enthusiasm out of Salmaan. I would like to see him involved in something brutal. I want him to actually take this game as his resume. I want him to state the case for why it is that he keeps getting chances, because there are other players who would have, on the similar pieces of evidence, not made it. I suspect that the issue is that sort of thing that we always don't want to talk about, which is we're trying to find a way to make that team look more like what we are in the country, and I get that part. And he's also a very, very good man, I have no doubt, and from a good family. But I also think that you still have to state your case. No one on earth is ever doubting Sia's place or Cheston Colby's place because they earned it. So I just want to see Salmaan Murat earn it this time. I want to see him want it. I want to see him bleed a little bit and also not be, limping off in 20 minutes. So that would be one of my wish lists. And I think that's one of Rassie's wish lists. Quite frankly, there's a reason why he's hanging with Salmaan, and it probably has to do with he sees something that we haven't seen yet. So let's see it. And everyone will be happy. No one's looking for any of these guys to fail.
Certain Cars has a wide selection of vehicles available at certaincars.co.za and at our branches at Casino and Menlyn. With over 30 years of trust and excellence, Certain Cars is your #1 nationwide dealership. With over 95% customer satisfaction, our hand-picked cars will ensure that you find your dream car from one of the top brands available at Certain Cars. Certain Cars, the better way to buy and sell cars.
I spoke to Tinus van Staden this afternoon. He was his editor, sports editor of Rapport. And he said it's because he thinks Salmaan came through the elite player development. So Rassie's been watching him for a very, very long time. So there must be something to it that we don't know yet, that he still needs to prove at this bigger stage. It's probably something like that. And the other thing was that our friend Hendrik Cornier, that Tinus works with very closely, so talked about the impact that Tony Brown is having on the Springbok side, not so much in terms of the game plan, but in terms of the skills. And he says you see a lot of that in terms of like Ox now suddenly being a interlink behind the, doing those little fancy passes and the likes. And he mentioned, and I'm going to say Blue Bulls now. Sorry, guys, apologize for being too Blue Bull eccentric or centric here. So sincere apologies. But what he said was noticeable that Hendrik picked up is that Ruan is not trying to run over people anymore. Ruan Okie now is running on the soft shoulder because he's not that big a guy. And now he gets around the guy instead of trying to run over him like a Eben Booten, for example. And that is directly, apparently, attributable to Tony Brown.
Yeah, that's a good point. And by the way, Murat does have very good hands. Yeah, he may have the best hands in the air besides maybe Peter Steph, in that you give him a bad throw, he can still make it. And there is something to that. I mean, we just talked about line-out problems. So there's one way of telling the story where like Salmaan is coming in to fix the line-out. He's a reliable target. He has a good frame. He has the body to be a test lock. I think it's just he's almost being too controlled with his emotions. And so some of the players, your whole job is to rein it in. That's Eben, actually. Like it was the first 4 years, like, we got to like make sure that you're in the game and you haven't lost the plot, the larger plot. And then it fully matured. Then you see that kind of evil eye stare with Alan Alatoa, and you go, okay, Eben's got this, because he's never going to do anything cardable, but he's still going to stamp his approval. I think Murat's got to sort of realize how big he is. It doesn't go without saying in test rugby. At other levels, he would have been the big guy, so like no one will mess with you. Lavani will mess with you. Marcos Kermer is going to see what you're made of, and I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to show the guys back home, I can scrap, I know I'm the good boy too. I'm the leader. I got good principles. I have abstract notions of leadership. I can state a case. I come from a pedigree of all that. And also, I can fight in the street. And if someone messes with you, I got your back. And I think that's what the guys need to see from Salmaan. For him to be viewed by the players, which is more important than anything else, not by us, not by the coaches. The players have to say, I'll follow that guy into hell. I'm walking over broken glass. I will get scratchy. I'm going to get down in the dirt because I see him doing it. So if he's not going to be that fire breather, then I think he has to show it by example. So one more case for him to mix it up. And I just think there's no place on earth better than in that remote village, the mother city of Argentina, at a stadium called the Mother Stadium, to give the mother of all performances. Like, come on, let's go. Let's see what it looks like.
You know what's very interesting? I spoke about this. We've got a couple of Spanish followers now. They all watch the Lekker Rugby Pod with subtitles and everything. You said, following them as well because you speak a bit of Spanish. And they're all excited. I mean, they're really hyped up for this game. I think they reckon that Argentina's got a good chance of actually winning this game.
I mean, so if you think about it and position Argentina in your brain differently, just put yourself in their shoes. They beat New Zealand in New Zealand. And you can say, they did it before, but it was something different about it because it was a real spanking. They emerged from round 4 as the only other team that could win the rugby championship. Like that, I'm not sure that's ever happened before. I cannot imagine. So now you have a situation where people are saying, but the Springboks have one hand on the trophy. Not for Argentina. Argentina is playing at home in Argentina, in a remote place that we've never been to. So I would think Argentina is thinking this thing goes to the final weekend. So a win for Argentina is not just literally a win to get to the 6th round. Is literally that would define their season as saying our best performance in the rugby championship in all the years we were in was that on the final weekend in Nelspruit, it was just a shootout. It was just two teams. Whoever wins, wins. I mean, I think that might be a little different. I think we could win less than they would have to win. But still, the point is this weekend shapes as the defining moment, just like the proud history of Argentina in the World Cups, where they've been semifinalists. If you look at the page of Argentina Rugby, which you should, and you look and see what they feature, it's that. It's the fact that they are underrated, get to semifinals. When they get the guys together from all around the world, they can do it. And this would be on their front page of their website as well. This would be the new thing. This would be the apex of their performance in the Rugby Championship. It's better than anything Italy ever did in the Six Nations. It's vindication for their invitation to the Rugby Championship, which should have messed it up and said it's not Tri-Nations, and now it's this Four Nations. It would validate it because they would finish above All Blacks in the final table. I think that's true. I think there's no way for the All Blacks to come back. So if they were to win, I mean, if Argentina was to go 3 wins up. So there's a case to be made here where it's one of the finest moments. It's also situated, apparently, I did more research about this. It's in a place where they are generating players. There's a place there called, it has the lawn in it, LOWN, that is generating players that go from that city, they go into Tucumán, or they go to Mendoza or Salta. So it's a generating. It's almost like look at it as a place like Nelspruit, where there's a significant playing group, like a Faf or a Dwayne comes out of there. So this is heartland, if I could say it that way. It's a place where it would not only a win would help Argentina this week, it probably would encourage so many other boys right now to get away from football, soccer, and move to rugby.
All right. Yeah. Exciting. Now, you know Felipe Contemporanean, and I must be honest, he's impressing me as a coach. I mean, it's his first, he just started now, and he's got that Argentina team by the scruff of the neck. He knows, he understands him. He's Argentina himself. He's a folk hero himself over there. The perfect guy to take over, and he's doing a good job of it. But now you get this team from the Springbok side that nobody suspected, nobody expected. You as Felipe Contemporanean, what do you plan? How do you counter this?
Externally and internally different, right? So externally, coaches are all liars. So he'll lie to the world and say, we don't pay attention to what they do. We do what we do. We focus on what we do. You know, it's all about us. It's normal coach speak. It's whatever. It's bullshit. Internally, they would say, so we got a big decision to make. Do we put all our eggs, all our chips on winning the first hour, like possibly even big in the first 40, hang on through that horror stretch the box will give us? So how would we constitute a team if we go, we win or we get ahead, and then we survive the box blitzkrieg from 40 to 50 to 55? And then who do we finish with in game management and the breakdown? That's actually quite a big ask, and it might make them start someone who wouldn't be starting normally, and it might make them hold someone back to the bench, which is just what happened with the All Blacks when TJ Perenara and Bowden Barrett were held back, and it didn't work. So this is, again, the sort of in your head thing that we keep saying, and it's that annoying song that we love to sing because it's fun to sing, but I'm sure it's annoying to everyone else. Yeah, by definition, this team lineup gets into the Pumas' heads because they have to figure it out. Do I hold back Pablo Matera? Does Juan Martin Gonzalez maybe finish? What do I do in terms of the breakdown? Like, who are my opponents for Quacha? Quacha is a very difficult customer. He's wiggly, he's squiggly, he's hard to keep out. He's so small that actually it helps him. And then you have, these guys that don't even know that well, Wessels and Steenekamp. I mean, how would Argentina know those guys very much? It's not like they're playing in the Urk. So there's a kind of a unknown quality here. Most of the Pumas are known to the box because they play in France, Ireland, Scotland, England, and they are teammates. I mean, Jasper Wiese is teammates with the captain of Argentina. He probably knows him really well. They probably have bride together on Sundays. So, that scouting is not that hard. It's the other way around where the box are putting people on the field that, like Nortia, I don't know, Salmaan, Ben Jason. I don't think the Pumas have any idea about those guys.
Just in terms of results, do you expect a high-scoring game, or do you expect a bit of a slog, maybe a couple of points here or there.
Oh, my friend and your friend Johan is always good at predicting this particular facet. Like not so much who wins and loses and by how much, but more like the overall score. He's looking at 6 to 8 tries. I think that's probably about right. Not because it's a try every 15 minutes for both, but the spurts. I can see some spurts happening here. I can see the Boks scoring 5 tries and the Pumas only getting 2 or 3. And I can see that because of the spilled ball, the bouncy ball, the mimicry of this particular ground will be a lot more like what the Boks are used to growing up than the Pumas, who mostly do still come from Buenos Aires and environs, which is a much more lush place, a much more green place, and very urban cityfied. This is like farm boys. So I do think when you have that kind of bouncy ball, it can favor a guy like Fassi. he can spring off that ground and get so much higher and catch that ball and go to the races. I think also Mani will probably enjoy that. So I do think there'll be some scrappy tries, probably some soft tries. If this is the game where I think we might score some tries we shouldn't. They're just going to be, built from errors. A little bit like Loftus, that first game against Ireland, where you go, whoa, where did that come from? Justin Colby just chased and he got it. So it'll be a kick chase game, and kick chase games can sometimes develop a lot more tries than phase possession attack games, because it's very difficult to build a 20th phase attack from your own 22, but it's super easy to loft the ball. And 1 out of 5 times someone loses it in the sun, it bounces too high, squirts away, and Kubas Reinach, runs to the house.
As long as it doesn't happen the other way around.
So the danger of interceptions and bouncing balls goes the other way. You're right. But this is where sheer speed really helps you. Because if you just line them up and you say Mapimpi, Kurtley, Fassi, Kubas, I want you to have, and maybe Kriel, I want you to have a foot race with their top 5 quick guys. It's no contest.
Calculate your monthly vehicle finance. We offer customizable finance plans tailored to your budget. Easy application, expert assistance. To learn more, visit sithandcars.co.za. Sithan Cars, the better way to buy and sell cars.
Right now, the reason why we're having this, or doing this recording earlier than usual, is because you're flying to Australia. Like you said, you're going to attend the match there. You're going to be at the press conference. Let's talk about the Bledisloe just briefly. What can we expect? What do you think is going to happen? I know you said you don't have a horse in the race, and I feel the same way. But it's interesting to see which of these teams are going to win in terms of where they are, in terms of the development under the new coaches. The Aussies are a bit on the back foot after this hiding they got against Argentina and the likes. What do you expect?
I mean, if you twist my arm, I probably want Australia to win. I think it'd be interesting to see the All Blacks be under even more stress. And just because they're like our oldest rival, it's kind of fun to see them get bashed a little bit. And also, I think Australia needs some good news. It's pressure's all on New Zealand. Not only are they expected to win by their home public, they're expected to bully the Wallabies. So if it comes out, 18-16 and a win, that's going to be viewed as the Rays are still in the doldrums. It wasn't good enough. And then you go back to Wellington, where the All Blacks nowadays lose, and it's going to be, squeaky bum time. On the other side, I don't think Joe has to do anything other than have a respectable loss, 2 respectable losses within 10 points, 7, 6, 10 points. Totally fine. If he takes one, if he wins the first one, Joe, my brother, you are the toast of the town. It's been so long since Australia gave the All Blacks, a black eye, that they would just love him to death. And Joe would love himself that night. He'd look in the mirror and say, I was the best man for that job. And just watch me. If I get some belief in these guys, and now I'm 5-3 and they're 4-4, and we go to Wellington, a place that Joe knows really well, don't count us out. The Wallabies have always defined themselves by their relationship with All Blacks, to their peril. It's been to their detriment, really, that they've fixated on New Zealand. In some ways, I think the Springboks did the same thing sometimes in some decades, where you forgot everyone else and just focused on New Zealand. But one thing is for sure, the world of rugby is better when the Bledisloe is hotly contested. The world of rugby is better when Australia is good, because they can be very innovative. And the world is better when Australia is good because we want our southern hemisphere to be as strong as possible. And right now, Australia has been kind of a joke.
Yeah, it's interesting. The same Johan that you talked about, said to me this morning, Joe, he thinks only worried about 3 games, 4 games. These 2, and then next year against the British and Irish Lions. He doesn't care about anything else in terms of he would love to win this. Yeah, he can get away with not winning it because we're still building and everything else. But being the wily operator that he is, like you just said, winning this thing is going to mean so much to not just him, but to Australian rugby in general.
It's exactly right. Johan is right, and he often is right. It annoys
Surprisingly.
me sometimes. It annoys me sometimes that Johan is right, because sometimes I just go, "No, you got to be wrong," because he's right. He's right about the Blue Bulls too. So my information, it's pretty well informed in Australia, is that Joe has taken this whole season as a watch and see. It's an observation. It's a clinic. It's a lab. And like he's forbidding himself from using a lot of overseas players, just Korobete only. He could easily make a lot of things better quickly, right? By throwing in 2 Arnold brothers, Will Skelton. It's not that difficult to imagine, Sarah Karevi, who's, a really big handful. There's lots of ways he could make this better quickly, but he didn't want to. He wanted to do well, to learn to fight. He knew there'd be some dark days. He probably didn't think the Argentina loss would be that bad, and that's probably regrettable. But besides that, just being in the games, giving a good account of yourself, and then studying everyone. So this time around, you're probably going to see the closest thing to the Joe Schmidt domestic team that he thinks is the best if available. And, I think he will care. I think Johan's right. I think he will care more about this one than he has up to this point. I think he didn't give a fig about most of what happened before. It was just data into the machine.
We talked about glaring shortcomings, and Australia's one of the glaring shortcomings is the defensive system. We talked about it, the passive, whatever you call it. You think they might be able to update it or be forced to update it, because that was glaringly obvious. That's where the weak points in Australia. Argentina just exploited that to the max.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Joe Schmidt hired Lord Laurie Fisher from the Brumbies fame, knowing that he's a slide defense guy. He uses the slide fade. There's a fold in it, but it's mostly slide. And the slide just meaning that your 12 and 13 buy time and space by running diagonally backward, not forward, not even forward at all, like literally go back. They backpedal, go watch a video on YouTube from 1982. Everyone did that. It was to play it out, force you into the touch line, and then you come back. The problem with that, of course, is that the attack lines are much better now. The speed's much better. And the ability of anyone with an outside shoulder to get around you is too dangerous. So once they were beyond the first fold, they were done. They were off to the races. And there was, famous videos have been thrown around. Now, watch our friend Ringo's recitation of it, of wallabies just wandering around, looking at daisies in the clouds, not knowing where they are. But that's who he hired. And Laurie Fisher has said adamantly, I will not coach a rushdie. I will not coach a blitz. I don't want my players blitzing. We always bend, but don't break. But then they just broke. So it throws everything into a mix. I would imagine there's some hard conversations being had between Joe and one of the nicest guys in the world, Laurie Fisher, about the ability to change that. Probably not this year, though. So it takes a full 6 months to revamp that. You also have to talk to your franchises, your clubs, your provinces, and say, we'd like to introduce that, because no one does that. The closest that comes to any kind of rush D in the whole of Super Rugby is the Hurricanes. That's it. Like the New Zealand hasn't played either. So Joe Schmidt would have been thinking, I don't need it, because the athletes that he had at his disposal for the All Blacks, like Rico Ioane, so quick, Caleb Clark, Sevu Reece, these guys are double backs. Mark Talea is such an athlete. Like, there's a way for them to come back. Bowden Barrett, even at this age, is still very quick. The problem with the Wallabies is they don't have either. They don't have the right system nor the athletic speed. And so, I think it's going to be rough if the ball goes out there. So the hope for me, if the Wallabies are going to win, is that they make a tighter match at the Accor in Sydney, that the ball just stays within the trams, that there's lots of lineouts, because I think the Wallabies have actually very good lineouts, led by Jeff Parling, the coach. And I think it's going to be a kick fest in some ways, which may not make the Aussies very happy, But again, if they can hold the score down, that's good. But the long-term problem is just as you say, they had the wrong defense system for this era.
All right, Harry, we've run out of time again. Thanks for that. It was interesting. Enjoy your flight and enjoy that game. Let me know how the press conference went. I'd love to see that. Are you going to speak to both coaches or just to Razor?
I'll roll some video for sure. I think for sure I'll talk to Joe. It depends. So I think All Blacks go first. We'll see. I don't know how much we're going to see of both here.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.